This is IHSAHN, and you're watching Stormbringer, the Austrian heavy sign.
Immer is the 7th album you did as a solo artist. It's 3 more already than you did with Emperor. But people still reduce you to Emperor. When you read the threads and the blogs and everything, everybody takes Emperor as a blueprint for your work, for your solo work.
Yeah, I guess. And in many ways, I suppose it's natural just how things work. I mean, I guess in the past I was more aware of that fact. But I mean, at this point, as I say, I've been doing my solo stuff longer than we ever did Emperor. I'm 7 solo albums in, and people still are interested. It's I mean, as a musician from Norway, being able to be kind of against all odds, be somehow successful with one band is one thing, but to be able to continue as a solo artist for this long, I'm on a headline tour now, and in between that, we do festivals, and I play sometimes with Emperor, sometimes with my solo stuff. I mean,
so it's just to keep a natural balance between the two bands.
Yeah, I think it's I get to do both. What's not to like?
Yeah, of course. But I always read like people commenting like, "Can you add more blast beats and can you play faster songs and something like that?" Things they still remember from the very old days, obviously.
Yeah, but I think maybe it's like that. I don't really follow,
Maybe I read your blogs more than you do.
Perhaps, yeah, I don't know. And it's not that I don't care. It's just that I think if you compare it to the first Emperor albums, I mean, there was no scene, there was no career to be had, there was no money, no prestige to be had. We basically made those albums out of pure, enthusiasm for this expression we wanted to make. With no compromise and just head on, and I think that is some of the reason that we ended up, Emperor being what it was. It wasn't trying to fit into some part of a market or what have you. It was, and by doing that, I think, not by a plan, but just accidentally it carved out a space on its own, and Norwegian black metal became a thing. But of course, when we did that, it wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
and I like to think that kind of uncompromising experimental attitude, I mean, so some people find it strange that I do more what they call progressive music now, and thinking, he's using saxophone in his music or keyboards or what have you. But to me, thinking of the early black metal scene, with basically teenagers pushing the extremes of what we could do musically, I think it's strange that not more people from that scene are kind of continuing that kind of quest for something new.
So you're still pushing the borders.
Yeah, I mean, my main ambition is to just, keep myself enthusiastic and engaged in what I do. And I don't think any musician could really do that if you make music to please some kind of market or whatever. I mean, there's lots of music like that. I think it's called the pop industry.
Yeah, of course. But
and you still have gems in there, but there's so many people who try to do the right thing. But I think if I owe my fans, people have followed my work and made it possible for me to do this as my full-time job, to play the music I love, is to be as genuine and truthful and as kind of uncompromising today as I was back when we did the first Emperor albums. And if it was up to me alone, this would be what Emperor would sound like. Not in that sense, but I mean, this is how I make metal now.
This is the direction that it evolves to. Yeah.
So I can, as a fan of music myself, I like different periods of different artists. You and I don't expect people to just blindly follow what I do, you know, it's a very, very kind of fair exchange. You know, I make my music without compromise, and people can check it out or not.
So do you like to be criticized after all? Do you like to be criticized by people too for your work?
You know, only very few people that reach through to me, I'm afraid. My wife is probably the only one who can actually get through to me when it comes to my own things. I know that is a very uncharming feature, but
she's the last barrier you have to master before you can go out with your material.
We've been working, you know, closely and creatively for over 20 years. So she knows me so well and knows, you know, my limitations and my strengths and where I want to. She understands, you know, my kind of abstract concepts of things, and she can add to that and make suggestions. And so, you know, she's such a invaluable piece of that process. You know, but beyond that, I mean, reading criticism, I think it's not like I'm immune. It's very nice to have good reviews, and for the most part that means that people are interested in the album, and I get an opportunity to do it again. But
because I saw there are many people out there, they like Emperor but they don't like your solo stuff, although it's not that different.
No, it depends. And I also think that a lot of people might assume that what I do is kind of a different version, like a cheap knockoff of what Emperor was. But I think for most people, you know, it's something very different. You know.
Yeah, of course.
But maybe this is from what you read. My impression is not like, I think people after all these years they differentiate. They know that this is what my priority is now creatively.
So you from the inside have another view as, let's say, me or the fans from the outside.
And if to be quite honest, I don't think my record label would continue to release my albums, and the festivals and the promoters wouldn't book me if people wasn't interested.
Yeah, of course. Talking about inside and outside, I think Arctis was placed on the outside. You said in an interview once, and Amaro, on the other hand, is placed very much on the inside. Is this like nature versus soul? How is this meant?
No, I always have this tendency to create some kind of both visual and sonic kind of landscape to place an album in. So I can usually do a write-up of what kind of album I want to make before I actually start writing the music. So I have a rather clear picture of what kind of atmosphere that I want to approach, so that when I write music in that period, I can easily compare it to this original idea. And if I write something that I might be happy with, but it doesn't fit, you know, it's not a piece of that puzzle. You know, and then it's easier to recognize when I write something that I feel is a piece of that puzzle, because I come from that age where I related to albums. I want albums to have a certain, you know, even individual songs, but still that they complete a whole. So
you have the whole concept worked out in your head already before you go to write the songs.
Not worked like out, but it's more like an abstract notion of what it should feel like. And as for Arctis, you know, I had these images, you know, these icy landscapes, and so the metaphors of the lyrics, and maybe what kind of instruments I used and how I arranged it, will try to kind of paint that overall image. And for this new one, for me, the album is kind of inside this wall-less room, dark room. So the cover artwork suggests this, and I think also the use of far more intimate sound production, and to rather have, you know, a lot of low-end, you know, analog synthesis instead of the high-end string arrangements. You know, it's to create a different scene.
A little bit more muted.
Yeah.
Like go on the inside of your brain or something. A journey inside yourself, basically.
Yeah, I guess it's a more introvert in that respect. But then again, all these things are just to keep myself entertained.
Yeah.
'Cause
and the public, of course.
I hope so, but it's really that simple that if I'm not enthusiastic and kind of 100% into what I'm working on, if I'm not bringing that energy to what I create, I can't really expect anyone to be enthusiastic or have any experience with it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of shit in, shit out, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So and having done albums for as long as I have, had the privilege to do, I don't want to make albums on muscle memory alone. I want to bring with me the experience I have and then add to it. And I always set out to learn something new, for every album I make, and keep, this is what brought me to music in the first place. I've always had this fascination for writing.
Yeah. But music is the only thing in your life. You don't have any other hobbies besides that? Like, I don't know, as a Norwegian, go to hunting or painting or something like that? It's just music.
Yeah, music and family life and, trekking. We have several dogs, so I wouldn't say it's my only interest. But I don't, as I say, I don't have any other kind of particular hobby outside that.
So would you describe yourself as a typical average Norwegian guy?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
Who makes music?
Yeah,
of course. Yeah. Now, before Arktis, there was the Seelenbrechen album, which, besides the obscure title, is a very experimental album. It's a little bit outstanding from the others. Was this for me as a listener? Yeah. Was it at this point necessary to do an album like this to try out new stuff?
Yeah, I think for me, I decided very early on when I started the first album that I would give myself 3 albums, to build the platform that was IHSAHN as a solo artist. So I kind of I started over in a way. I started with The Adversary, which was much more heavy metal, and I started kind of back to my roots. And I kind of built on that, and I ended up with the third album after, which was kind of the conclusion. And I felt that's where I found kind of a musical platform for what I was doing, with 8-string guitars. And I found something that I felt was perhaps more representative of where I was musically. And then I did Eremita, which was in a similar style. I don't know, just exploring that field a little further. But then it felt kind of unnatural to just continue, in the same direction. So I wanted to reset the parameters a little bit. And I've always had a fascination for, probably because all my music is very planned. It's not a very improvisational style of music. Extreme metal has never been. It's very, very rehearsed and planned.
Structured.
Yeah. Very structured. So I've always had this fascination with musicians and expressions where it's more intuitive. Like the Amanda Galas or Scott Walker. For some of his more experimental albums. And also like what have you, like Miles Davis or people who can just have an idea about an atmosphere they want to create, as I have done, with my plans for the albums, but just spontaneously react to that. So the whole idea of Das Seelenbrechen was to kind of throw everything else out the window for a little while and just dive into this more intuitive way of doing it. So a couple of the songs on that album are pure improvisations, like everything, and a lot of the other writing was also very improvised, but still structured. But after having done all the regular recordings, it was me and Tobias Ørnes, the drummer. It was 12 at night, I think, when we finished everything else. And I said to him, okay, these are the lyrics, and this is kind of the atmosphere I'm going for. And then we just hit record. It was me and him, vocal mic and my guitar setup.
Yeah. So very intuitive and very what I meant with experimental.
Yeah, definitely. And it was very scary and liberating at the same time. because I'm very, having written music in that way for so many years, it is a very controlled, element. But so for me, this was like parachuting, like.
I think you caught this feeling really well on the album.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And for me, that was such a new experience and so valuable.
So without this record, Arktis and Omar wouldn't have happened.
And then, after...
It would have sounded different.
Yeah, but, having done this kind of very free form style of record, I thought, okay. And even, the albums that I've done before, and also with Emperor, it's also very kind of free form. It doesn't follow a certain formula. So for Arktis, I really wanted to explore very traditional songwriting. Have a very clear motive for the song. A very clear, chorus, very clear verse and the bridge. Very standardized, like all. Like 95% of all Iron Maiden songs.
To the basics.
Yeah, exactly. But of course, everybody have, with freeform music, no one has the blueprint of what you were aiming for. But if you write within that format, of a traditional pop rock song, everybody knows how that's supposed to be. Yeah. So the challenge is, of course, to fill those 3.5 minutes with something worthwhile.
Yeah, and fulfill the expectation of the people, of course. Because there is like chorus, verse, chorus, solo. Well,
But how do you make that format interesting and passionate?
Yeah. Because basically everything is said in music nowadays. There's nothing you can make so much new that people were so surprised. They say, "Wow!" Like, I think as a listener.
Yeah. No, but then again, there are so many. Kind of a lot of classical music are written strictly to form, but just so I guess the older I've gotten and the more experience I had, the more I appreciate not the limitations, but the kind of the creative focus of having a certain format that you're trying to fill. It's like giving a chef, I guess, a few ingredients. Okay, try to make something amazing out of this, instead of like, here's the whole store, make something.
Of course. Here's the whole grocery shop or something. The last question, you mentioned the Amanda Galas, and I read a quote of you. You said the Amanda Galas is as much black metal for you like, for example, old Battery.
Yes, absolutely.
What is the essence of black metal for you when you cut it down to the really finest point?
That's of course very, very hard to describe, but to me, black metal is not like a certain guitar sound or a certain vocal style. It's more that, that feeling that you get when listening to it. And for me, I can get that exact feeling from listening to Old Battery and to the Amanda Galas. It conjures up the same that same vacuum, if you will, of it's not even anger, and it's not hopelessness and desperation, but it's kind of a mix of everything.
Eerie kind of thing.
Spooky, and
a little bit spooky maybe.
It's for me like the title Das Seelenbrechen, where the soul breaks. And it's you can't really put your finger on what kind of emotion it is, but it's kind of that feeling when you just lose yourself in the experience. And I guess,
or if somebody breaks your soul or something like that.
Yeah, but it sounds very, in that way it sounds very kind of destructive.
Yeah.
But this is kind of a state where destructive and constructive kind of meet.
Yeah. Like it often does.
Which often, I think, with all kinds of art, I think that is what humans perhaps strive for. Because you can, through art, you can kind of explore the outer limits of our emotions and experiences, but kind of in a safe way. And perhaps as music lovers, some music lovers may find in art or music, what religious people seek in religion. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know either. So yeah,
It's
it's up to you out there to interpret the songs and the music. I say thank you, and I hope you will make outstanding music for a long time, and we have like many more albums of IHSAHN and many more shows of Emperor as well, of course.
Well, we'll just see. I mean, this is the only thing I know how to do, so I hope to be doing it for a long while too.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the support.